All right, welcome back to Turnbull Garage. So today going to be interesting video because I'm going to tear into this Suzuki Carry engine and find out what the internal damage is. I'm predicting one bent connecting rod. Having said that though, I do see some signs that there's some other issues with this engine. One, the intake, the throttle body has got a lot of corrosion in it, so it's had water in there. And I suspect the cylinders have got some standing water, which the cylinders might be quite rusty, and if that's the case, I'm going to have to get this board over and get 3 new oversized pistons. So let's just dig right into this thing and see what we can find. All right, the first thing I'm going to do is remove the accessory pulleys here, alternator, and then I'm going to pop the intake manifold off. Okay, some progress here. Intake manifolds off. This hose was really difficult to get off. It's not even corroded, but that was a challenge. But now looking down the ports, let me get my flashlight. You can see water in that cylinder, rust in that one, bit of rust in that one. This one's really nasty. So yeah, there's definitely some unhappy things here. But next thing I'll do is I think I'll pull this motor mount off and the flywheel. All right, I got the pressure plate bolts out. Let's see what this clutch looks like. There we go. All right, that pressure plate is not looking very nice. This is stuck in here. That is definitely very rusty. I think it's going to need some love. Okay, flywheel's off. Interesting, this bolt hole had oil coming out of it. I've seen that before, so obviously these are through holes into the crankcase. I see there's thread locker on all these, so I guess the threads are sealed with thread locker so the oil doesn't come through. I hate when they do that, but sometimes you get it. So spin this, spin this around. And we're going to pop this crank pulley off. Come on. There we go. And I think the next thing to do will be remove the valve cover. Actually, I'm going to flip the engine over. I'm going to take this line off here, flip the engine over, and remove the exhaust manifold gasket, or exhaust manifold. All right, I'm going to pull the exhaust manifold off, but to do that, you need to remove these heat shields, which are always a nightmare because the bolts always either strip or snap. So I got some penetrating oil on them. This stuff that I use by Seafoam called Deep Creep. It's really good stuff. Again, I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but it'd be nice if I was. But it's just a good product. So there we go. Let's get a socket on there and we'll see if we can crack these loose. So as expected, these are being a pain. I've got 2 on the top here and 1 there, which, yeah, it's going to be an ignorant one to get to. These ones just don't want to go. So I put some heat on it, but the heads are so stripped. I may have to get the welder out and do the old weld a nut on trick. That always works. I'll do everything I can before that because I drag the welder out. It's going to be a pain, but I'll get them off. So I decided I'm going to pull the water pump off. Two of the bolts you can't really get to. You have to remove this water pump housing, I guess you could say. And yeah, this engine is, you know, different from the last one I worked on, which was a two-wheel drive truck, a 2000 I had. I don't remember it being quite like this, but anyway, we'll pull the water pump off here because it is seized up. Okay, there we go. I figured it had to be connected to the engine there. So we got 4 bolts for this bracket, and then with that off, you can get at these 2 bottom bolts here. But yeah, it's a different water pump than the last one that I had, but it is seized up. All right, I'm gonna have to get my welder out. I cannot get these 3 bolts left that I have to get off. So I'm gonna bring the welder out, weld some sacrificial nuts onto those, and then they'll come off. So there you go. If you ever want to get a bolt out that's stripped, just weld a nut onto it, and that takes care of that. So now I can access the bolts, but I also want to get this last one off here. That one could be quite a challenge. Actually, what I'll do is I'll get the manifold off, and then I'll be able to get to it better. But anyway, next thing I'll do is crack this exhaust manifold off. Okay, let's pull the valve cover off. Ugh. Yeah, there's definitely been some water in here. Not too bad, but oh, I didn't realize this is a chain drive on this. I thought it was a belt. I guess the next thing to do is the timing cover. And it looks like there's 4, yeah, 2 nuts, 2 bolts on the bottom of the oil pan. All right, with all the bolts off the valve cover, I do believe that's all of them. Yep, that's a bracket there. So anyway, let's see if we can, this pops off easy. Oh yeah. A little tight down here, like there's another bolt. But there isn't. Oh, there. I wonder if we do have to take the oil pan off, because the oil pan, it is always a pain when you have, I might have to pull the oil pan. Yeah, let's pull the oil pan off. Okay, I just got all the oil pan bolts off, so just gotta find a place to pry this. There we go. I just got a little screwdriver and just popped it in there a little bit. You gotta be careful. You don't want to mar the surface too much, but that was enough to crack it loose here. Let's pull this off and see what we're looking at here. Ooh, there is some ugly, ooey sludge in there. That is gross. And this is really rusty. Wow, this thing did have a lot of water sitting in it for a fairly long period of time. Let's get my flashlight here, see if we can see anything bent. Oh yes, that is bent. Definitely. That one looks straight. That one looks straight. The number 2 cylinder is definitely has a bent rod. So I'm going to remove this oil pickup so then the engine can sit flat, and then I can work on the front of it. So we'll just pop those 2 10mm bolts out. I hate to see all this rust and everything in here. It's terrible. Yeah, that's an ugly pickup tube. The more I look at this, the more I'm starting to think I might need a new engine. There's a lot of rust, and I don't like rust inside motors. And the cylinders are probably going to be very bad. Okay, flip this up. Let's see if we can pop that timing cover off. Yep. So the oil pump is inside the timing cover. I'll definitely be opening that up to make sure that isn't rusted up real bad. So what do we got here? Looks like this is your oil tensioner. So your engine oil pressure will push this bracket, which pulls this tensioner across the chain. Pretty cool. Actually, I've not seen one like that before, ever. It's an interesting design. So I'm going to pull the tensioner off and get this chain off. Alright, so if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know, or if you've worked on engines before, you know the oil caps, or sorry, the camshaft caps need to go back in the same order. Much like the other engines I've worked on, this is, you can see this I2, I3, I4, there's an arrow pointing, and then you got E2, E3, and E4. So this is the exhaust side, this is the intake side. So I can take these off and I'm comfortable that I don't have to worry about where I put them. It's easy, they're marked to go back on. I don't have to lay them out. I'll be able to put them back in the same place. But anyway, we're going to pop these cam caps off, pop the camshafts off, and then the next thing to do is remove the head, which will expose the cylinders, which is really going to tell me the future of this engine. All right, with the cams off, the head bolts out, the next thing obviously is to remove the head. Now, actually I'm going to remove this tensioner before I do that while it's attached to the head. There are some, where's my magnet here? There's these little cam followers. They're a hydraulic, looks like they're a hydraulic. They're a two-piece, so they're hydraulically operated. Those need to go back in the same place. So I'll be very careful when I pop the head. I'll tip the head on its end and not let those fall out because they will be labeled and put in. So let's just pop this tensioner off real quick. There we go. Tensioner. Stick that over there. Okay, let's pop this head off. Is it going to come easy? Oh yeah, it's coming easy. Oh my lord. Yeah, that's not good. All right, let's have a look at the bottom of the head first. There's some gory mung in there, some rust. Let's see what the head gasket looks like. Doesn't look bad. Okay, let's slide that over to the side. Tip this up on its end. And this is just some really greasy, nasty stuff, my goodness. So the middle one is the one that's bent. The cylinders, they do not look good. This thing is going to need some machining. And these are not that big. I don't gotta find out if you can machine these. They're obviously, it's an aluminum block with inserts in there, so Yeah, all right, well, next thing to do is flip the engine over and pop the rods and caps off. The caps and the rods, pull the pistons out, and let's see that bent rod. It's actually not too bad. That's good. A little bit of scoring in there, but I've seen way worse. So that's the cap. Let's see if we can push this rod out. All right, a couple things about these pistons. See if you can see. If you look right here, there's an arrow. So that's pointing to number 1 cylinder. So obviously these relief cuts for the intake side, you're going to want to make sure that when you put it back in, that is correct. And also on the flip side, the connecting rod has got an arrow sort of pointing towards the front of the motor as well. Further, there is some writing. Let's see if you can see it here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it on the camera here. Let's see. There you go. You can see that 2 that is split across the cap and the rod, so you know for the orientation of the cap onto here. The only thing that's not on here, all the pistons have got a number 2 stamped on them, so you got to make sure you're going in cylinder number 1, 2, and 3. So either I'm going to just make sure I place these on a box or something labeled, or I'm going to stamp them. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp them. I've done this before. I'll take a whole center punch, and I'll do 1 pop in here, 1 pop for cylinder number 1, 2 pops for cylinder number 2, and 3 pops for cylinder number 3. So if I do that, and with the way that the markings are on there, I know I'll be able to get these back together. So I'm going to do that right now, and then pop the rest of the cylinders out. And there is the smoking gun. That is what I thought we would have, a bent rod. It's bent a little bit that way, and obviously a lot that way. It's kind of hard getting it out. The crankshaft had to be orientated the right way to get this out, but that will go onto my wall of shame. That's pretty cool. So anyway, 1 more piston to go, and then we'll pop the crank out. I got all these bolts loosened up here. And that should have that. Now this should come off quite easy because I can just tap it right here. Famous last words. Is there any more bolts? I don't think so. There we go. A little pry in here. There we go. Don't think much now. Note that this does have silicone in it, so when this goes back together, it's got to be sealed. The oil doesn't leak out all over. Oh, the seal is holding the crank wants to come with the seal. Okay, I gotta get that seal out of there. All right, I got that seal out. I think that's what's holding this up. Yep. And the bearings here, yeah, they look good. Bearings are good. I'll pull the crankshaft out. Boy, there's quite a groove from that seal though on the crankshaft. And the block. We got our thrust bearings. This engine looks like it only has thrust bearings on the block side, not on the girdle side. But there you go. Bearings are not bad. And the block is the one thing I want to make sure it's not damaged from that hydraulicing. That's a lot of force. It does look like the bottom of the cylinder has taken a bit of a whack. Let's get the camera in front of the flashlight and have a look. So right there, you can see where the bottom of the cylinder has taken a bit of a hit. Now, that really doesn't do anything for the piston at all. Like, it's not going to have any problems. Ooh, that doesn't look good. You can see right there, it looks like the liner has split. Or is that both on both sides? I don't know, that doesn't look good. That does not look good. Or that's where the piston was, and that's just a rust mark around the piston. I think that's what that is. Yeah, it is. The same down here, you can see that mark, so that's fine. But the rust in that cylinder right there, that is bad. So at the very least, these need to get bored out, which would clean up that score mark right there. So yeah, as long as this block isn't damaged, I'm gonna start getting some prices on pistons. I have spare rods, so I don't have to buy a connecting rod. But I'm gonna find out what it's worth to get another engine, or do I just go ahead and rebuild this one? So I'm just gonna spend a bit of time cleaning some of this stuff up and putting it on the bench, and let's look at all the bearings and just have a final sort of go over of everything. Okay, so let's just have a closer look at everything here. So starting with the crankshaft, there's quite a lip where the lip seal was riding on there. That can be polished, but it is pretty deep. The crankshaft is not bad. It's still quite smooth. There's some spots where there's some etching, where there was some, obviously a bit of water was in with the oil. So it's not perfect, but it's actually not too bad. The main bearings, if you look at the main bearings, they actually are not too bad at all. The thrust bearings have actually got quite a bit of wear, especially right there. You can see there's quite a bit of scoring on the thrust bearings. And here's the bearings in the cap, if you will. Now, I don't know if you can see it on here, but these bearings aren't deadly smooth. It's almost like they've got a rough machined surface. Normally they're dead smooth, but these are actually more like a record. They're a bit rough. The head, a lot of cleaning up to do in the head. I haven't looked at that really so much. Now getting down to the real problem. Obviously, there's one of these things does not look like the other. The rod bearings are not bad, just like the mains. Interesting though, cylinder number 1, let's see if you can see it here. The babbitt was starting to delaminate. Yeah, you can see it there. It was starting to delaminate a bit from the backing shell, if you will. So that's a bit strange. And yes, obviously this connecting rod is no good. It is bent this way and that way. The bearings in the head, they're good. They're pristine. There's absolutely no oiling issues with this. All the surfaces for the camshaft lobe or camshaft journals are nice, so that's good. Now, I was stating that I have a spare set of rods for these engines, and I do, but not for this engine. This engine is different. Like I was saying, taking it apart, this engine overall from the other 2000 Suzuki Carry that I had, it was a 2-wheel drive truck. It's different. The connecting rod, if I match these pistons up, let's just try to get them so they're sitting the same, roughly the wrist pins are the same. You can see they're not the same. And the piston is actually smaller than the truck that I've got. So that sucks because I am gonna have to get a connecting rod, and I'll probably get a piston as well. Although I think this piston is okay. It does have a pretty good score here. I think where the cylinder was damaged. And yeah, I just don't trust it after having that kind of force put through it. That piston's probably no good. So I'm going to need to have rod and piston. The cylinders are going to need to get bored. I may have to polish the crank. The head, let's just tip the head up here. Hold on. The head is actually not too bad. Oh, wait a minute. Is that cracked right there? No, it was just some junk. Yeah, the head is not too bad, other than the rust that's in there. Yeah, the rust is concerning on the seats. Once I pop the valves out, yeah, we'll see what that looks like. So all in all, I really don't know if it's worth rebuilding this engine or just going and buying a used engine and getting it shipped up here. I'm gonna do some phone calls, get some prices. I mean, I really would like to do an engine rebuild video with this, but you know, there's a lot of cost involved, all these parts, and getting the block machined. Back to the rest of the engine, you know, the amount of rust that's inside the engine is also concerning. And look at this sludge I was telling you about. Let me get my screwdriver here. This gooey sludge is disgusting. I don't even want to know what that is. Anyway, yeah. So, and then of course the oil pickup tube. Where the heck did that go? I don't even know where it went. But you know, that's all rusty. So there's a lot of work on this engine, stuff that concerns me. It's really borderline, in my opinion, whether this engine is salvageable or, you know, just buy another one. All right, so that's pretty much going to do it for this video. You know, we got the whole engine torn down here, basically figured out what the problem was with this one bad rod. And now it's a matter of finding out whether it's worthwhile rebuilding this engine or just go ahead and buying another used one. It's right on the cusp of whether I do that or not, but I'll make some phone calls, get some prices, and in the next video I'll have some information on that. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. Thoughts and comments down below. Think about subscribing so you'll know when the next video comes out on this series. And yeah, thanks a lot for watching, and have yourself a great day.